Assalamu alaikum students. This is Safir Hussain and I'm back with another lecture of your subject stylistics. And in the previous lecture we have studied about how do we analyze the phonetics and phonology of a piece of writing, or how do we analyze the sound patterning and the different sounds of the words and different syllables, etc. And we have also studied different techniques of using sounds, for example alliteration or assonance or consonance and onomatopoeia, etc. And today we shall talk about the graphological level of stylistic analysis. We had talked about it very briefly in our introductory lectures. We would talk about it again today and with a bit detail. So the first thing is to ask is, what is graphology, or what is graphological level of a language, and how do we analyze it? So we had said that graphology is actually the patterns of written language, or the way words or the language or the sentences or the phrases appear on the page you are reading, or the shape of language on a page. So all these things, they refer to graphology. And if you look about some definitions by some critics or scholars, Leach defines graphology as it involves punctuation and paragraphing as well as spacing. So the use of punctuation, it is visible to us, we can see it, so it is a part of the graphology of a piece of writing. And paragraphing, how has the writer divided his or her ideas into different paragraphs, that again is something related to our vision or seeing, so it is again a part of graphology. And as well as spacing, how much space has the writer given between paragraphs or between stanzas or between words in a stanza or between lines in a poem, etc. So all these visible or graphic aspects of writing, or if you talk about here of literature, is graphology. And another a bit elaborate definition has been given by Crystal and Davy, and they say that graphology is the study of a language's writing system. How is a language written? For example, the convention of writing in English language is that we begin from the left side of the page and we go towards the right. Whereas in the writing system, in the conventions in Urdu language, we begin from the right margin or side of the page and we move towards the left side. And normally in almost all languages, we begin from the top left or top right corner of the page. We write from top to bottom, we do not write from bottom to the top. So these are different conventions or different rules of writing a language or writing something in a language. So it is the study of a language's writing system, or orthography. Orthography is a language's writing system, is seen in various kinds of handwriting or typography, whether it is written by hand or typed on a computer or on a machine. So what rules of writing do we follow, and all those things that appear on the page are related to the graphology of a language. So these are the formalized rules of writing, the formal rules of writing which are accepted, which are you can say universal for the use of a language. So all these things, they make up the graphological level of a language. So generally when we are analyzing a poem or when we are analyzing a piece of literature, we have a look at the layout of or the design of that poem or that piece of writing when we are doing a graphological analysis. So what elements are there in the layout or in graphology of a piece of writing? So there are certain things like font type, which type of font has been used, and you might be familiar with the font type. It is something related to typography or typing something on a machine. When you are handwriting, there is no font actually. You may follow a font, but usually we do not have a font or font size because you have printed books in front of you. So we would talk about font because these are related to printed things or pieces of writing. the size of the font, the indentation, that a paragraph, either it begins from the very corner of the line, or it is indented, it is a bit forward, and we have alignment, whether the piece of writing is aligned at the center of the page, or left or right side. And we have word spacing, the spaces between words. We have line spacing, the spaces between lines. We have capitalization, and we have different rules for it, that the first letter of the first word of a new sentence should be capital, or etc. So there are different rules. We have leading, which refers to the space between verses or lines in a piece of poem, or stanzas in a poem. And we have stanza length. If you talk about a poem, we are generally talking about a poem because we can analyze almost all of the graphological elements of a poem very easily, because poems are usually short as compared to prose, which is usually very much longer than poems. But we do have certain longer poems as well, like epic poems. So we would not be able to do a complete graphological analysis of a complete poem consisting of thousands of lines. So when we are analyzing such poems, we might take some stanzas from them and then analyze them according to all these things. We have title design. We would look if there is if the writer has given a design, a specific design to its title or not. We would definitely look at punctuation. How has the writer used punctuation, and how has he or she followed its rules? And then we might have parentheses or brackets somewhere, and they should be analyzed when the graphology of a piece of writing is analyzed. So what's with all these things? What do we do with all these things? Actually, we study all these things because the different writers, they manipulate, they use these different elements of graphology to create certain effects, or to evoke, or to create certain themes or meanings in a piece of writing. And we study all of these elements of the layout of a poem or prose when we are doing graphological analysis. So we cannot miss anything related to the graphology or layout of a poem, because it may have a certain importance, or the writer might have used something there to create some particular effect, or to create some particular meaning. And writers usually create certain effects, and they create certain themes and meanings, usually through deviations and foregrounding. So deviation is actually when writers break the rules, or rules of writing, or like rules of grammar, or generally rules of a language. So when they break something, that something becomes important, because there should be or might be a reason for the writer to do so. For example, if a writer has not capitalized the first letter of a word of a new sentence, there might be something in it, because the writer has intentionally broken a rule. So it may have different meanings. So that's deviation, deviating from the normal, getting away from the normal standard. And then we have foregrounding. And foregrounding is making a word, or a phrase, or a sentence, or a complete paragraph, or a passage prominent from the rest of the text. So if the writer has done something because of which some word or some phrase has become prominent from the rest of the piece of writing, it would be termed as foregrounding. So writers usually foreground doing because using some deviations, or some other different techniques as well. We would study these in detail in our lecture about foregrounding. Let's keep it here for this lecture right now. So let's have a look at an example. This example was given in the first lecture as well. And this is basically a passage, first paragraph from Charles Dickens' novel A Tale of Two Cities. And you can see here that this text here is emboldened, it is in bold form, and it has a certain or specific font type. It has a specific font size. You cannot see the font type and size in this form when you have the slideshow on. Here you can see the font type is Arial Black, and the font size is 20. Actually it is not bold, and you can see the bold is not marked on, so it is not bold. And let us see these apostrophes are used by us or by me, so these are not used by the writer, but the writer, you can see, has used commas for punctuation. He has used a lot of commas, and somewhere here he has used a capital letter, he has used another capital letter here. Again we have a lot of commas, and then we have a full stop. So you can see the graphology or the appearance of this piece of writing has used it contains commas, it contains some capital letters and a full stop, and there is nothing unusual or different in this piece of writing. So the writer has used a lot of commas. Why has he done it? Why he has not divided this whole passage into different sentences? He has written one long sentence, and there is just a single full stop at the end of it. So these commas, they actually are used by the writer to present a continuous flow of thoughts or a continuous flow of ideas. The writer wants the ideas or the thoughts to go without any break or without any pause. He does not want to pause and give a break anywhere. He wants his ideas, his thoughts to be in a continuous flow and in a continuous order without any break or without any pause. So you can see these commas have been used for a specific purpose. Otherwise you might have thought that they are just commas, what other use they have. And then you can see some capitalization here. So through this capitalization, this word light and this word darkness, they have become prominent from the rest of the text, because there is no capitalization anywhere else except here in the I of it. And this I has been capitalized because it is the first letter of the first word of the first sentence. So this is capital because of the general grammar rule, following the general rules of grammar. But this light and darkness have been capitalized, breaking the rules of punctuation, because you do not use a capital letter for a common word or a common noun or something which is common, something which is not specific. So this L should be small and this D should be small as well. So this capitalization has foregrounded, it has made these two words prominent, and the writer actually, he might wants your attention or focus on these two words. That's why he has capitalized these two words. Or he may point towards something that this light he's talking about is not something, the common light, or this D here is not this darkness here is not the common darkness we have experienced in our lives. So he may want to give some different meanings to these two words. And the full stop used at the end has been used for ending up or for stopping the flow of his ideas, or when his thought or his idea is complete, the writer has put a full stop to complete it and for the reader, so that they may get that the sentence or the idea is complete here. So you can see the different elements of graphology of a piece of writing do have certain or different meanings or different uses other than the common uses. And let's have a look at another example, and this time it is a poem by William Henry Davies, and you might have studied it. The name of the poem is Leisure, and the poet has used it. You can see there are I think 7 stanzas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 stanzas, and the graphological elements are there, that the poem has been divided into 7 stanzas. Each stanza consists of 2 lines, and we have a single space in between each stanza or each couplet, because it is made of 2 lines. Each stanza we would call it a couplet. And you can see the writer has used capital letters here in the beginning of the lines, and he has written a word in complete capitals, the word what here. And this is not a common rule of grammar. This is again deviation from the normal rules. The writer has used a lot of commas here, and he has used some colons, some question marks, and you can see again question marks, full stop, comma, colon, etc., and no other elements of graphology are here. The rest of all the things are written in normal form and following the rules of the grammar. So why has the writer capitalized this word what? So we may infer or we may guess that the writer wants a forceful start to his poem, and using a full capital means you have to forcefully pronounce this word, and it again gives a forceful start to the poem, and it may be a sort of an exclamation from the writer, and it may show the intensity of his emotions or feelings, or the way he is talking to us, or the way he wants his ideas to be understood. Then we have some question marks here, and these question marks they have been used for to create an effect of some rhetorical questions. These actually are some statements and given in the form of questions, and these seem to be some sort of philosophical or rhetorical questions that he is asking us. What is this life if we have no time to stand and stare, and if this is full of care? So he wants us to think deeply, and he has presented his ideas in the form of a philosophical question to be pondered upon by the readers or by the listeners, that they should think about their life if it is full of care and having no time to stand and stare. And then we have colons. There are three colons have been used, and the colons might have been used by the writer to give a list of things for which we have no time. Usually we use colons before the beginning of the list, is we say that the following items are in my bag, and then you will put a colon, and then you will give the list of the items you have in your bag. So here the writer has used colons again in a similar way, and he has used these colons to give us a list of things we have no time for. For example, we have no time to stand beneath the boughs. Then we have no time to see where the squirrels hide their nuts in the grass. Then he wants to talk about that we have no time to see the streams full of stars. Then we have no time to turn at beauty's glance. We have no time to wait till her mouth can enrich that smile, etc. So he has given a list of things for which we have no time. So for that list he has used these colons. And something I had missed here, you can see the B of the beauty is again capitalized, and this is something related to our vision or seeing, because we will pronounce the word beauty with a small b and with a capital B in the same way. If there was a small b, it would be pronounced as beauty. Again, if there is a capital B, again beauty. So this capitalization has nothing to do with the sound or speaking or phonology or phonetics of the language. It is related to the vision or seeing this word. So this capitalization may have been done by the writer to force or to stress out the idea of beauty around us, and to make this word or this concept prominent in his poem, so that we might turn our attention towards beauty and its glance. So, and at the end we have seen that a full stop has been used, and the writer has used the full stop to complete his thought, to present to us that he has said whatever he wanted to say. So students, you have seen that different graphological elements are used intentionally by writers to evoke or to create certain effects and to give certain themes or certain meanings to the common or usual words or sentences. and inshallah we would study this graphology or graphological analysis in detail in another lecture on this very thing, the foregrounding and the deviation, and inshallah you will get further clearance in your ideas when you would study these lectures. Thank you very much.